Here's the take nuke for you, okay? You are all unbelievably Islamophobic pieces of okay?
Far left won big in Michigan, but it's already kind of backfiring. Hey guys, welcome back to the show, your home for independent and nonpartisan analysis and commentary on politics, media, internet insanity, and more. Guys, I took a couple days off. I was traveling and spending some time with family, so sorry, hope you didn't miss me too much. But one thing that went down while I was gone was, of course, the Democratic Senate primary in Michigan, which is the state where I lived and I'm going to live again, but I'm in Miami for a couple years right now. Anyway, I've been following this race with great interest because it's kind of a microcosm of, I think, the broader civil war or internal struggle inside the Democratic Party. On one hand, you had Haley Stevens, who was a establishment Democrat, kind of endorsed by the establishment of the party, including folks like Gretchen Whitmer, the governor there, and she had more also of a pro-Israel perspective. And then you had Abdul el-Sayed, who was the leftist candidate. He's not technically, he doesn't affiliate himself with the Democratic Socialists of America, this far-left group we've talked a lot about, and crazy anti-extremist group in many ways, anti-American extremist group in many ways, but they all did support him, all those types, and that's his crowd. He campaigned with the leftist streamer Hasan Piker. He very much ran on this ultra-progressive messaging, and he was victorious, although by a much more narrow margin than people predicted. So it is, of course, a big result, though they were already kind of panicking as well, because they won, but things are not, in fact, going how they hoped. Anyway, here's the headline from NBC News. Abdul el-Sayed wins Michigan's Democratic Senate primary, notching a Midwest victory for the left. The former public health official has defeated Representative Haley Stevens, NBC News projects, despite facing a huge advertising disadvantage. El-Sayed overcame a nearly $65 million onslaught of outside money and an establishment that had rallied around Stevens. Popular Governor Gretchen Whitmer endorsed Stevens late last month, a move seen as a late last-ditch effort to stop a rising El-Sayed. El-Sayed, a former public health official, goes on to face former Representative Mike Rogers, who claimed the Republican nomination without opposition Tuesday. Their race in November is expected to be one of the most competitive in the country, and it could determine which party controls the Senate. Now, here's where we get to the tea. Here's where we get to the interesting part about how Republicans are quite happy about this result, actually. They much, and I mean much, preferred to go against and have to run against el-Sayed with all his baggage and extremism and controversies than have to run against Haley Stevens, who was seen as more moderate, and especially someplace like the Midwest, like Michigan, where the primary electorate is just a tiny slice of the population. So the voters that can get you a nomination are not the same as the voters that you need to win a general election. Well, in a place like that, in an environment like that, Stevens is a much stronger candidate in so many ways. And so Rogers is thrilled. Republicans are thrilled at the prospect of running against Abdul el-Sayed, and they're making that clear. So here's more from the story. Rogers and National Republicans had signaled that they consider el-Sayed an easier opponent than Stevens. The National Republican Senatorial Committee went so far as to produce a digital ad emphasizing el-Sayed's progressive credentials and endorsement from Sanders, a move many viewed as an effort to boost him into the general election. Trump told Fox News on Tuesday that he thinks Rogers will do much better against Abdul than he's going to do against the Congresswoman. Now, this is an interesting point because whenever you see this, you see a party getting involved in the other party's primary to support one candidate over the other. That's typically a sign that they think one side of that primary is going to be easier to beat. So they went all in for the more radical left-wing candidate because they would rather face him in the general election, which if you're a Democrat and your main goal is to win the seat and to win the Senate, should concern you. But a lot of them don't really seem to care, at least the hardcore Abdul el-Sayed supporters. In fact, and we're going to check in with Hasan Piker later in this video, they are not exactly building bridges, but rather kind of giving the bird to people who didn't get on board with Abdul Sayed fast enough. And this all isn't just speculation. There's actually some polling to suggest that Stevens was a much stronger candidate against Rogers than el-Sayed. So here from the New York Times, they go over two polls from a Republican-sponsored poll, one that found in a head-to-head matchup, Stevens versus Rogers, Stevens up 4, and then when Rogers gets to go against el-Sayed, he's actually up 1. So this is a big deal because really, by all rights, this is a seat that Democrats should win. They should have on lock because the momentum and the tide is going to be with the Democrats because of Trump's unpopularity, because of the war, because of just the natural cycle of politics, where anytime you have a president, typically the next midterm election, the other party wins. Their voters are really energized and show up, whereas the kind of incumbent president's voters tend to be more complacent. Plus, there's just kind of a perennial dissatisfaction with whoever's in power at the moment. So this election strongly favors the Democrats in every way, really. But the fact that with El Sayed, Rogers still has a good chance, right? They're within the margin of error. It's a neck-and-neck race. I mean, that's a big sign of his weaknesses as a candidate. Remember, this is a guy who lied. El Sayed is a guy who lied over and over again. He lied about being a physician, even though he was never a licensed physician. He lied about never having supported defund the police. Meanwhile, he repeatedly supported it. And to me, that's one of those things that it's like, makes me question your judgment forever if you ever hopped on board that train. Now, there's plenty of problems with Mike Rogers as well, of course, but this is the far left kind of wave of candidates that we're seeing sweep the country right now. He's not technically DSA, but they all support him and he's their guy. So he's kind of part of this. I mean, heck, he chose to campaign with Hasan Piker. So I think the symbolism here is between generic MAGA Republican in Mike Rogers, who is surely a flawed candidate in many ways as well, that we'll get into as this election unfolds, but he's just more, he's less remarkable or unique. Whereas El Sayed represents this flank that is surging, but also, I think quite fairly, earning some scrutiny as well. So anyway, I want to show you how Hasan Piker, which again, this Abdul El Sayed guy, chose to link arms with him and really bring him on the campaign trail, make it clear this is my guy, my buddy. Here's how he is graciously responding and reaching out with an open hand to Haley Stevens voters to get together with them, because that's what you do, right? You build bridges in politics. You have a nasty primary, but then you kind of close ranks around the nomination. Like Stevens did ultimately endorse El Sayed. She offered to help him if she can, which is basically what you expect in partisan politics. But Hasan Piker has a slightly different stance. He is instead lashing out at people who didn't support El Sayed in the primary and calling them all bigots and racist and Islamophobes. Let's listen to his crash out.
Like everyone being like, Abdul has a ton of work to do mending bridges. Here's the take nuke for you, okay? You are all unbelievably Islamophobic pieces of okay? You literally called the dude a terrorist for months on end and like called him a sexist, misogynist, terrorist, bad candidate, fake doctor when he has like 2 degrees. And now you're gonna sit there and be like, well, you know, you really gotta come to me now. Like, what are you talking about? Do you want to win or not? Lock the in, okay? Lock the And I do worry that there are some out there who, in an effort to make sure that that this narrative that a progressive can win in a state like Michigan doesn't take root, will literally either subtly or, you know, not so secretively endorse Mike Rogers or stay out of the race while, you know, trying to push the excitement in the opposite direction.
So there's so many things wrong with this. I really don't know where to begin. But the irony of this message coming from Hasan, of all people, is hilarious. I mean, he's lashing out at people for not rallying around the Democratic Party flag. This dude did not throw his support behind Kamala Harris in 2024. He was vocally very critical of her, suggested that in many ways she'd be indistinguishable from a Republican, and routinely like he is not some, and that's fine. I'm not a believer in like, you know, closing ranks and being a tribalist as an independent political commentator. But for him, of all people, to suggest, well, you got to get in line and support the party now. We got to have a unified front. Since when do you believe in that, Hasan? That's like the opposite of your entire career in commentary and politics. So it's just hilarious. Listen, do I think that Abdul El Sayed is a terrorist? Of course not. But I do think it is totally legitimate to criticize and scrutinize him for choosing to align himself with someone like Hasan Piker, who is objectively a terrorist sympathizer. I don't think he's engaged in terrorism himself, but he has waxed poetic about his favorite designated terror groups. He has repeatedly said Republican senators should be killed. He has cheered on actual terror attacks on his live stream. And, yeah, of course, not even getting into the whole America deserved 9/11 thing. But when you choose to make somebody like that, and I draw a distinction here, I don't disagree with candidates. I don't criticize candidates simply for going on Hasan Piker's streams. I really think a candidate should go any place with a significant audience of people they want to reach. But campaigning with him and linking arms with him and being like buddy-buddy with him is a totally different thing. And then I think it's much more fair to ask some questions. Like, do you think America deserved 9/11? Obviously, I don't think Abdul El-Sayed has ever suggested such a thing, but choosing to bring the guy who is literally known for that more than anything else on the campaign trail with you is going to raise eyebrows. And then people aren't racist if they have questions about that. It's not Islamophobic to have questions about that. And I'm sorry, but yeah, sure, they made spurious accusations against each other. This is ugly. It's a food fight. It's a nasty primary. It got ugly. Haley ultimately endorsed him. So I don't know what he's complaining about in terms of y'all called him sexist, what have you. It's just Hasan is so he feels entitled to demand that people now rally around the flag in a way that he has never done and explicitly rejected, and wants to play the victim when Abdul El-Sayed threw some slings and arrows as well during the primary campaign that were very brutal and very harsh and, charged political rhetoric. And that's just how elections are now. So spare me the tiny violin. And I'm sorry, they called him a fake doctor because he lied about being a physician. He repeatedly described himself as a physician when objectively he was never a physician. That's pretty bad, actually. And so that's not like them being Islamophobic to him or anything. That's a totally legitimate and valid criticism of a political candidate explicitly running on their record as a public health official, but also lying about a huge part of their credentials and education. Yes, he went to medical school and he got a degree, but he never became a credentialed physician. That's an important distinction, and it's something he was objectively dishonest about. So spare me this. Really, I found this ridiculous. I do think it's interesting. It's going to be a gift to Republicans here. They would much rather run against the Hasan Piker flank of the Democratic Party than a more establishment, more moderate-seeming candidate like Haley Stevens. And ultimately, I think Abdul El-Sayed might probably squeak and win anyway, but it's going to be a very narrow and competitive race. And that's only because of the terrible choices that they've made in terms of this candidate and their presentation of him and aligning him with some of the most radical and controversial forces inside the Democratic Party. Really, in a more normal election, this shouldn't be a competitive race. Yet control of the Senate, which indicates and dictates the entire second half of Trump's presidency, how it's going to go, could come down to this one race, and Democrats have made it exponentially more difficult for themselves by listening to the infinite wisdom of the lovely and always insightful likes of Hasan Piker. Other than that, they're doing amazing. That's just my take. You guys will have to let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you aren't yet, and do consider becoming a channel member to support my work. I call it the far left and the far right, and unfortunately, that's not always the best business model. So I do need support from viewers like you, and with that, guys, we'll leave it there for this one and be back with more real soon.